Hello. Welcome to It's Nice to Share Alteryx Gallery and Best Practices. My name is Roger Schultz. I am a solutions engineer here at Alteryx. And I'm going to be walking through some of the best practices in preparing a app or a workflow to publish to the gallery, and then walking through that process of sharing that either with end users or coworkers for workflows. So our agenda today, so the first thing we're going to do is talk about preparing an existing workflow or app, things you should consider prior to publishing. From there, we're going to go ahead and publish a workflow to the gallery, and then we're going to share it with the collection and to end users. From there, we're going to go back, make some changes to the workflow and republish it, and show some version control and different ways you can track the changes of your workflow. So we're going to first walk through this with a workflow, and then after that, I'm going to walk through it with a analytical app. So we're going to do it both ways. The processes are similar for both, but there can be some little nuances and differences, and usually who you're sharing with is going to be different. A workflow, you're usually going to be sharing with more of a coworker, someone who might be building out things in Alteryx, and there might be some lessons they can learn by looking at that workflow, where an app is usually the end consumer who's not so worried about the workflow itself, but being able to get to those results themselves. Before we get started, I did want to point out there is some more virtual training coming up. So for the next 3 Tuesdays in March, we're having classes at 10 a.m. Pacific time. We're also having classes on Thursdays on the 10th of March, and then the first 3 Thursdays of April, we're going to be having classes at 10 a.m. So if any of these topics look interesting, we encourage you to go register and sign up for the virtual training, and hopefully it helps. Also wanted to point out our community. We're getting a very robust community of Alteryx users out there. This is a great way, as you have questions, to be able to go out there and get quick answers. It's also the way for you to contribute with your skill set and help others find answers to their problems. So this is a great way to get, in addition to training, you're working on a workflow, you need a quick answer, you have a problem, you want to see what the potential solutions, you can go out there and post out in the community, and we're finding that a lot of people are getting answers right away to their problems, and keeping them moving forward with Alteryx. So now I want to just dive right into the training. So I'm going to go ahead and pop up Alteryx. And today we're not so worried about building out a workflow or app, but the sharing of it. So I encourage that if you have a workflow that you might want to share, you can use that, and then you can either maybe publish that out to the public gallery, or if you have your own local gallery. So going back to the PowerPoint, if you want to follow along, you can either if you have an account on the Alteryx gallery, you can go and use this as the gallery, or if you have your own private server, you can use that. So to get started with this workflow, there's always a few considerations and things you need to think about when you're going to publish something out to the gallery. And one is that you might have certain data dependencies in your workflow or your app that you need to make sure that can transfer to the server. So things like if you have database connections, we need to ensure that the server has those same connections. So you want to make sure that the naming conventions are aligned to what's on the server. Probably have to ask your server admin for that, and making sure that your ODBCs and those types of connections are aligned. The other thing is any local files. So if you have local files on your machine, you're going to want to make sure that you include those in the data assets that we'll be covering here in a minute. If you're using a shared network and you have those mapped on your local machine, those mappings probably aren't going to exist on the server. And if that server has access to look at that shared network, what you want to do is not change it to a map drive. You want to put the full path in there. And there's an easy way to change all of those within Alteryx. So if you want to follow along, please feel free. You can go out to our samples to download a workflow if you want to kind of follow along. You can download one of the workflows here, or if you have your own workflow, that's fine. This isn't really about the workflow as much as going through some steps to get published on the gallery. So the first thing that I always encourage everyone to do is to go and go in your options and just go in and look at under advanced options. You're going to see these workflow dependencies. And when you open that up, you're going to see you can see your ODBCs. You can make sure maybe that those have the standardized names that match the server. You can check out other local things that you may have to include in your assets if it's a local file. But if it's a shared or a map drive like this is on a shared drive, and you want the server to be able to access it, maybe that file is being updated and the server can read it from that location. But the server's probably not going to know what the W drive is. So what I can do is come in here and say, I want to make this a UNC path. So if I come in here and say UNC, it's actually going to take that map drive and put the full file path. So now the server will be able to access that data if it has the rights and be able to pull that data live. So SQL, I have a standard connection there. The naming looks good. So now that everything is kind of UNC, I can kind of click OK, knowing that this workflow now should be good to publish. Other things to consider, with your ODBCs also is you may want to set up aliases. So if these have passwords in them, you may want to come up and set up aliases for those. And that's easily done by going, once again, into the advanced options and going to your alias manager. And what this allows you to do is if I go in here and say, add a new user account, let's say if I want to look at my Oracle, I can come in here and choose my connection. So what this will allow me to do is have one place where I can go in my workflows, if I have a lot of different connections, and manage all those passwords in one user interface. So if all of a sudden, if I have service accounts set up and I need to update a bunch of passwords, I can come in one location and change all those passwords. So just very helpful from a management standpoint. So from here, we're going to go ahead and publish this up to the server. This first example, I'm actually going to, because I have database connections, I'm going to do it to a private server. Like I said, if you're following along and you don't have a private server, you can do it to the public server. And then from there, so once I publish it out, then the next time with an app, I'm going to actually go out to the public server. So I'm going to go in and say, I want to save this, and I want to do a gallery. Right now, I have a public gallery, so I need to add my gallery. And the way you do that, you can say add a gallery, and you can just put the URL of your gallery in. So when your admin sets you up, he's going to send you the URL. You put that in here, and you can go ahead and say connect. So this is where the second part now that we checked our paths, we checked our database connections, and this is the third thing. So if you have any local files that need to be packaged up with this workflow, this is where you can specify that. So down here under workflow options, you can go into your view workflow assets. So I can either I can leave this and say I want them to access this on the shared drive using this path, or if I wanted to, I can include it, which is going to be more static. It's going to be packaged up with the workflow, and make sure it's included. So you can do this with local files also. So you want to make sure that any local files, any local macros, custom macros that maybe you built in the workflow are packaged up here. So I can click done there, and then I can go ahead and click save. And this is now publishing it up to my private studio. So this is just getting it on the server. No one else has the ability to see this right now. I can click view in browser. And it's going to take me right into what we just published. We are in the private studio. So from here, I can, if I wanted to, I can run it. I can go into it, and you're going to see a few options. So I can now run it. I can download it, and I can share it. So in order to share this with other users, you need to put it to a collection. So I can say add this to a collection. And then you can either place it within existing collections, or you can create a new collection. So I'm just going to say new collection. And I can say create and add, or if I want to, I can just click add up here to add it to my shared workflows. So I'll go ahead and add that new collection. And then it kind of shows you up top, transactions has been stored to new collections. So now if I go into my collections, we can see that I have my new collection. I can click on it, go into my collection, and this is where you can give individuals the ability to access. So anyone who has the ability to go in this collection can see this workflow and run it. I can come in here and add users. So if I wanted to, I can start putting in, coworker and bring them up and give them access. They'll get an email notifying that they have been granted privileges to this new collection, this new workflow. And then from there, once you've given the people the permissions, you can then also go into the workflow and choose workflow settings to say, what do you want them to be able to do? So do you want them to be able to, download this workflow? Do you want them just to be able to run it? Do you want them to be able to share it? So you have three options here to kind of control what they can do with this workflow. So I'm going to go ahead and just give this a quick run. So this is kind of what end users, this is a workflow, so there's really no output. It's just updating data behind the scenes on the server. But you can see that it's been ran. You can look at your log here and the workflow results. So you can see all your previous runs. So when users run this, they can always see all the apps they ran and the output. There's custom settings that say how many days you want to keep. So great. So now that we've done this, what if we wanted to make a change? So let's just say we want to go back and make some change to our workflow. So I'm going to go back into Alteryx. And one thing that I want to touch here, so I'm going to go ahead and close this, is when you go back in, let's say you go back in the next day and you open this up, you don't want to open it up on your local machine. What you want to do is you want to actually, now that it's on the server, you want to open it up from the server. So you can go open workflow, and I can go right to that server where I published it. And now I can open it right from there. This is important because now when I republish this, so let's just say, I want to make a change. I want to go and change this to no. So when I republish this now, it's going to actually have versions out there, so I can track the changes of my workflow. If you actually go open that local file up on your local machine and republish it, it's going to keep it as two separate workflows with the same name. So it's going to be much harder to do version control. So I'm going to go back through, and we're going to republish this again. So I'm going to come over here and say save. So, okay, now I'm going to go back out to my gallery, go back to my private studio. Actually, let me throw this one away. So there's my version 1. Actually, I think I did actually publish as a separate one. So actually, I'm just going to go save. So we don't want to do the save as either. That will cause you to lose your version control. Go back out here, refresh. Go to my private studio. And back here, I think it's going to be this one. So now we can see the version control. So you want to make sure you don't do the save as, that you just hit the save button. So it will track this version control. So now we can see I got 2 versions. This is version 2. I can come in here and review these versions. So if I wanted to, I could say I want to just click here. And now I can change which version is published. So right now, the published version is going to be version 2. If I wanted to, I could come in here and say, make that the published version. If I want to revert back, maybe I realize I made a change I didn't want to make, I want to revert back to the older version, I can do that all through this version control. So now we've done that, what I'd like to do is go back through and kind of walk through this again, but this time I want to walk through using an app. So this is something, that, this is built more for another user. Maybe someone would want to come in here and download this. So if I was another designer, I can download this. I can open up the version right in Alteryx now, and you could share the workflow with another developer. But sometimes you want to share just the app. The people who just want the results, they wouldn't be into downloading the workflow. They want to get to the final data output. So we'll walk through that now. So there. So this is what would come up if I did that. I can click import, and I'd have it on my local machine from the server if I was another user wanting to leverage this work. Okay, so we'll close this down real quick. Go back to So the app that I'm using today is in our samples. So if anyone wants to follow along, they can go to Help and go to Sample Workflows and Local Apps, and it's going to be this mortgage calculator. So if you go in there, you open that up and save it to a local folder, you can follow along. So I'm going to go ahead and open it. And this time I'm going to go into my mortgage calculator that I already have saved. So here's the app, pretty simple app. And basically what this app is doing is it's just basically allowing an end user to, through these interface tools, to update these fields and basically get a projected payment on a mortgage. Just a quick, easy mortgage calculator. So there's not a whole lot of dependencies here. So if you go in and we review it, just because it's a best practice to come in and always double check and making sure that we have no dependencies. So we just have really no dependencies to worry about here. So this should be good to publish right out to the public gallery. So to do that, I can just go in and go File, and say publish this out. So save as. And this time I'm going to go out to the Alteryx public gallery. And I'm going to say save. So when I view this in a browser, it's going to once again go right into that private studio. And I got my calculator here. So if I want to, I can run this, ensure that it works. So come in here, I can, I can choose what I want to do, what I want to solve for in my mortgage, and then I can put in the custom variables, click run. I get my output. I can choose a variety of ways of downloading this, and I can also see it in my workflow results now. So if I wanted to, let's see my past runs, I can go in there and look. So if I want to now share this, now that I've verified that everything published up correctly, I can go into my private studio. I can go into my mortgage calculator, and I can share it. So I want to add this to a collection. Maybe I want to put this into my financial app collection. So I'm going to do create an ad. So now that I've added this, I'm going to go to my collections. And from there, you can see the workflow. I also want to point out, I think I forgot to mention, please, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A on the phone line, or you can use the chat window and just send me a private message that way if you don't want to use the Q&A. So now if we come into this collection, I can go in here. Once again, I can kind of add users. Once again, this is share. So, you know, it's automatically when you publish it to an existing collection, it's going to automatically, the people in that collection is going to have the rights to it. You can also go in and once again, click on this workflow settings, determine exactly what you want people to do. Do you want them to be able to actually download it? Do you want them to be able to share it? And of course, you're going to want them to be able to run it. So now let's just say we want to change. So if you look at this when we run this, you're going to notice that, you know, it defaults at an 8% interest rate. So let's go make a change. Let's use version control and see how that update goes through the app. So let's say we want to make this reflective, the default value, to more what standard market rates are. So maybe we want to change that to 4%. So I'm going to go back down, close out my gallery. I'm going to go back into my workflow this time. I'm going to go to my interest rate. So this is that default value right here. So if I want to, I can go down, change that to a 4. And if you're following along and download it, you can make those same changes. And now we're going to go back in, and we're going to save this back out. So just by doing save. So I'm going to open this up in my browser. So here it is. So we're now in the, so if I go into my collections, and I go ahead and click run, we're going to see that that version 2 automatically published. So now when I hit run, we're going to see that change that we made. The 4% is now there, and that's now the new default value. If we wanted to, we could go back into our private studio. I can go into my version control, and we can then, if I wanted to, I can go into and say, make this the published version, and that should now revert us back in our collection to what the end users can see, back to the 8%. Oh, not update yet. Let's see if it works this time. Keeping. So, all right, so those changes did not commit. So let's go in here. So there we go. There's our 8% from the previous version. So kind of use version control. It gives you kind of the breadcrumbs of the changes in your workflows. It also gives you the ability to revert back if you maybe made changes that you didn't want to make and you want to resubmit those. You can always leverage it out in the gallery to republish something to your end users and revert back to an older version if need be. So, so just to recap, you know, things to really think about, you know, in sharing with Alteryx. The biggest thing is thinking about, you know, what's on your local machine, and is the server going to have access to that data when you publish it up? So going through and making sure that all your paths, or the full paths if they're on a shared network, making sure that all those files, hard-coded files, are included in the data assets when you publish. So to review that, we can go in here once again, and we do save as, just double checking these data assets and reviewing that everything's included in these workflow assets. So anything that's a local file that might need be needed, making sure that you check these local file, so they get packaged up into it. Making sure any database connections are standardized to what the server has. That's the way now that server has access to all the data needed to run that workflow. And then once you publish it up, sharing it into a collection, making sure that the users have the rights to that collection that you want. And then from there, once the collection is shared, setting the permissions, whether you want people to be able to download it or not, and some of those nuances that you can do on the server and the gallery. All right, so that kind of brings the overview and the walkthrough of the gallery to an end. There's a few more things I'd like to quickly go over. So, as you continue to get started with the server, we have a lot of resources out there again. So once again, we got the community where you can go out and ask questions. You can contribute and help others get answers to their questions. You can also, we have our training resources out there. So if you want to go out and sign up for any of those future virtual trainings, you can at www.alteryx.com product training. And then our technical support. So we have a outstanding client service team that's always willing to help. So you can email them. You can also at clientservices@alteryx.com. You can do a live chat. So you can bring up a live chat window with one of our service reps, or you can give them a call at 1-888-255-1207. And then finally, we want to know how we're doing here. So hopefully this was helpful today, just touching on some of the basics of how to take the work that you've done and be able to share it either with your coworkers, the end users who need access to that data. So you'll be directed to a survey. So if you could, fill out that survey and give us your feedback, that's greatly appreciated. Let's see. So, and yeah, and finally, so I'm checking those chat window one last time, making sure there's no questions, but there are no questions. That does bring this training to an end. I look forward to hopefully talking to you in the future and more trainings. Thank you for your time today.